Hello, grade 7. In this lesson, we're going to finish up with the topic density. With the worksheet 2, density, you will find this worksheet attached in your classwork. We will look at the methods we use in order to measure mass and volume that we need in order to calculate density. Let's revise what we've covered in the previous lesson. Remember, we said that density is a measurement of how light or heavy an object is. We looked at the particle models of solids, liquids, and gases, and we said that in solids and liquids, the particles are close to each other. Therefore, in a certain volume, there are more particles in solids and liquids than in the same volume of gases. The more particles in a certain volume, the more close the particles are to each other, the more dense the material is. So density is the mass for a given volume of a material, and we can compare materials of 1 centimeter cubic of volume and see how the mass of each material. And their masses determine which have more density for the same volume. Now, we said that density is a measurement of a mass for a certain volume. So the two variables that we need in order to calculate density is the mass and the volume. The mass is measured using a balance, and the units of mass are either grams or kilograms. And we measure volume with several ways, and this depends on the type of the material and the shape of the material. Let's look at each shape or material alone. The first shape is the regular shaped objects. Regular shaped objects like rectangular blocks or maybe cubes, their volumes are measured using a ruler. We use the ruler to measure the volume using the formula volume equals length multiplied by width multiplied by height. So for this rectangular block here, we need to multiply the length of the block by the width of the block by the height, and we will get the volume of this rectangular block. Of course, we need to pay attention that the units that we use in this formula must be all the same. We cannot multiply different units of length in the same formula. If the material that we need to measure its volume is a liquid, we measure the volume of the liquid using a measuring cylinder. So we pour the liquid into the measuring cylinder and we take the reading of the measuring cylinder from eye level with the measuring cylinder to know the volume in centimeters cubics. If the object that we need to measure its density is an irregularly shaped object, like a stone or a pebble or a small ball, and we need to measure its volume, we cannot use a ruler to measure its volume, so we use a measuring cylinder to help us with the displacement method to measure the volume. What do we mean by displacement method? We need a measuring cylinder in which we will pour some water. Now we have a volume of the water that we need to read. Then we carefully add the irregularly shaped object in the same measuring cylinder. We will notice that the water now will rise. It will rise by the value of the volume of the irregularly shaped object. So in order to know the volume of this object, we need to subtract the two volumes. The volume of water with the object minus the volume of the object gives us the volume of the object alone. Let's now move to calculations of density. Remember that we calculate density using the formula density equals mass over volume. Let's start with the first exercise. A classroom measures 3 meters, 4 meters, and 6 meters. Calculate the volume of air in the room. Give your answer in cubic meters. Now remember that fluids, liquids and gases can flow. So whenever they are put in a container, they take the volume of the container. Here, the air in the room will take the volume of the room. So if we have the dimensions of the room, we can calculate the volume of the air in the room by calculating the volume of the room itself. So what's the volume? The formula of volume, remember that you need to have all your work showing. So you need to put the formula, put your numbers and your final answers with the units. So volume equals length multiplied by width multiplied by height equals 3 meters by 4 meters by 6 meters. I made extra attention, I took extra attention that the units of the classroom are the same. I didn't need to do any conversions before multiplying them together. So 3 multiplied by 4 multiplied by 6 gives me a final answer of 72 meters cubic. Remember that the volume is in meter cubic, meter by meter by meter. The density of air is 1.3 kilogram per cubic meter. Calculate the mass of air in the room. Okay, so now we have the volume of the air from the previous part of the question. We have the density of the air and we need to calculate the mass. So what do we know? We know volume 72 meters cubic. We know density 1.3 kilograms per cubic meter, and we need to know the mass of the air. We need to rearrange the formula of density in order to calculate the mass. To rearrange, let's use the density triangle. So density equals mass over volume. We need to know the mass, so we cover the mass, and our formula is now mass equals density multiplied by volume. So mass equals density multiplied by volume. Before we can continue, let's note that the unit of density and the unit of volume are compatible. What do I mean by that? The unit of volume is meters cubic, so the unit of volume in the unit of density must be the same, meter cubic. Before I continue, so 1.3 kilograms per cubic meter multiplied by 72 cubic meter. This is eliminated with this, and our final answer is 93.6 kilograms. Question 2. A steel cube has sides of length 20 centimeters. Calculate its mass. Density of steel equals 7.7 grams per cubic centimeter. Give your answer in grams and in kilograms. Pay attention to every detail in the question. So we know that the sides of the cube are measure 20 centimeters cubic. A cube has equal sides. So each is 20 centimeters. What do we know? We know the length equals 20 centimeters. We know the density equals 7.7 grams per centimeters cubic. And we need to calculate the mass in grams and in kilograms. Let's start by calculating the volume of the cube, because to calculate the mass, we need two values, the density and the volume. We have the length of the cube, so we can calculate the volume from this information. So volume of cube, okay, equals side cubed, 20 centimeters cubed, and equals 8,000 centimeters cubic. Okay, now we need to calculate the mass. Again, to calculate the mass, we refer to the triangle of density. Mass equals density multiplied by volume. Mass equals density multiplied by volume. Density is 7.7 grams per centimeters cubic multiplied by the volume, 8,000 centimeters cubic, and this equals 61,600 grams. So now we have the mass in grams. To calculate it in kilograms, what do we need to do? We need to divide by 1,000, and this becomes 61.6 kilograms. So these are the values of mass in grams and in kilograms. Question 3. This apparatus is used to find the density of an irregular shaped piece of iron. The results are shown in the diagrams. Let's have a look at the diagram. So we have a scale and we have two measuring cylinders. The scale has a reading and the piece of iron is on the scale. So we use this to measure the mass. And we have two pictures of the same measuring cylinder. One with only water in the measuring cylinder and a reading of 100 centimeters cubic, and the other with the same measuring cylinder but with the piece of iron added to the measuring cylinder, and we have a new reading of 110 centimeters cubic. So let's look at the question and see what do we need to do. A. What is the name of the apparatus used to measure the mass of the piece of iron? This apparatus here is a balance, and it's an electric balance. So it's an electric balance. What is the mass of the piece of iron? The mass is the reading of the electric balance. It's 78.7 grams. What's the volume of the piece of iron? Remember that the volume of the piece of iron will be the volume of iron will equal the volume of water with iron minus the volume of water alone. So it would be 110 centimeters cubic minus 100 centimeters cubic, and it equals 10 centimeters cubic. Calculate the density of the piece of iron, show your working and the correct unit with your answer. When you're asked to show your working, you have to show the formula, have to show your numbers in the formula and the final answer with the unit. So to calculate the density, we need the formula. Density equals mass divided by volume. The mass is given from the electric balance, 78.7 grams. The volume we've already calculated by subtracting the volumes in the two measuring cylinders, 10 centimeters cubic, and the density is 7.87 grams per centimeters cubic. Okay, so you still have 2 questions in this worksheet, questions 4 and 5. You have to do them as a homework, and we'll do them together in the next session. If you find anything not clear or you don't understand anything, please send me a message and I will answer all your questions.